Hey guys, this is Tauna, and today we're going to be talking about the top 5 precons for beginners to Magic the Gathering. So these are aimed to be very straightforward game plan, easy to upgrade or improve later on, because while you're a beginner now, you're eventually going to become, me. You're going to be, having a million decks, wanting to play a whole bunch of different things, and you want to have your upgrades and, be able to improve your deck and be able to play at higher levels and stuff like that. They've all got simple mechanics as well, but they are there to teach you new aspects of Magic. Each one will kind of focus on a different aspect of Magic that you can kind of aim towards, some similar, some very different. Now, while it's overwhelming to start with, don't get me wrong, there is a million different decks out there, a million different Magic products, a heap of different sets and everything. Playing the same deck over and over again is going to be your best bet at the start, and these are going to help you learn, and each one of these will also play relatively different in each game too, which is great. We're not just talking about as well new to Commander, we're talking about new to Magic altogether, right? Like one of these decks here I actually brought for my 7-year-old because I think that it's that straightforward, and I think that it's that easy to grasp for him. As a player just starting out Magic soon, he's going to hopefully be able to kind of grasp that, and then we can look at improving it later on if he wants to kind of keep playing that deck, or I can find a different deck for him if it's one that's going to kind of suit his gameplay better. I've also aimed towards decks in here that are relatively accessible, rather than ones that are harder to get or expensive. The first one I'll talk about here is harder to get at the moment. However, it's literally just been printed, so it's going to get reprinted to hell. Don't get me wrong. Before we do get into that, though, I just wanted to say thank you. We are aiming towards 25,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and so far we are almost at 14,000 subscribers already. We are the second biggest MTG YouTuber in Australia. I think that, we've become the go-to place across Australia, across potentially even the world, for news for Magic the Gathering, pre-con coverage. I think that I, offer a very relatively different experience to other YouTubers, and this is my dream happening. I got into YouTube 7 years ago or something, and I never dreamed of the fact that I could potentially make it into a career and potentially be able to cover something that I absolutely love, like Magic the Gathering. It's just insane. And we actually got to go onto, not that you can see Logan's tag there, we actually got to go onto a gameplay video. A little bit of a spoiler as to which which game I'm playing here. You can see the card. If you could pick out which commander this is from this tiny little blurry picture, let me know. But I got to go on Midnight Manor. We recorded a couple episodes for that, and they're going to be coming out soon, and I'll link them because I am very excited. It was very, very fun. So getting into the first one here, we've got the Temur Roar deck. So this is a very, very straightforward game plan. All you're doing is playing big dragons. Then you're going to play more big dragons. And then you're going to attack people with those big dragons. It's very simple to upgrade. You just need to add in some better ramp and some better dragons. But overall, this deck is absolutely great for newer players because it's just big, stompy creatures, and it's just very easy to kind of, wrap your head around. You're going to play my big dragons, I'm going to attack you with my big dragons, etc. There's not a whole lot of triggers or anything like that. Most of the triggers are like when something enters and stuff, so it's very, very straightforward. It can be made 10 times stronger. All you need to do is replace the commander with Miram, the Sentinel Worm from back in the Baldur's Gate set. He is a Temur dragon. She is a Temur dragon that copies your dragons when they come in. That will make the deck just 10 times stronger already out of the box. So these are a couple cards that you can find in here. Urani is the one that I would suggest you use as your kind of commander there. Flying, trample, whenever they enter or attack. Look at the top 8 cards of your library. You can choose a dragon from them and put onto the battlefield. Very, very straightforward. You're just getting free dragons out. And then the Dragon Tempest over here is a card that you'll find within there as well. That's going to these are the kind of synergies you'll find within here. These ones here kind of buff up dragons, to do more stuff with dragons and stuff. This deck is the dragon focused precon from Dragon Storm. So it's just going to be focused around dragons. It's great. Next up, we got the Eternal Might Precons. This is a zombie-based deck that's based around drawing cards and discarding cards. You've got synergies in there for both drawing and discarding, but realistically, that's kind of most of the synergies there, so they're very, very straightforward, and it's very kind of simple to play it. There are some absolutely gas reprints in here for zombies, some amazing zombies stuff, and in it, you're also going to learn to play with your graveyard. So the graveyard, in some games, once a card's in the graveyard, it is mostly gone. in Magic the Gathering, there is a lot of decks that kind of play around with your graveyard, whether it's taking stuff from your graveyard and bringing it back, whether it's taking stuff from your graveyard and then exiling it, or maybe just playing it from your graveyard. So this is going to help you kind of learn a few things about your graveyard, which is great and very, it's a relatively simple, straightforward concept, but it's also very different to a lot of other card games. So a couple of cards you're going to find in here, and I think that as a beginner, Temur Roar's Will is probably going to be the commander that you want to be using here. They have Vigilance and Menace. Whenever you attack, draw a card, discard a card, and then whenever you draw a card, zombies you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Now keep in mind that this does have to be zombies that are out on the battlefield at the time. If you play a zombie afterwards, it doesn't retroactively gain those buffs, but just straight out of the box, as soon as you have your commander out and then it comes to your turn, you draw a card, already all your zombies are getting +1/+1. So you can see the kind of simple, straightforward cards that you can potentially add in here with just more kind of card draw and stuff if you are going to be using Temur. The other option for a commander in here is Hashaton's Scarab's Fist, who does kind of the opposite. Temur's is focused around you drawing cards. Hashaton's focused around you discarding cards. And then whenever you discard something, you're going to get to pay 2 and a blue and then create a tapped token copy of it. Very straightforward mechanic. Insanely strong mechanic. This guy here is actually a part of like the CEDH, which is the like super competitive, highest power commander. So you're going to be able to find, a whole bunch of uses for him, and potentially later on, if you want to build a deck around him, you're already going to have him. Now, as a bonus here, I'm going to be starting a series of starter precons. So these are decks that I'm going to build. They're going to be roughly, $50 in total, or between 50 and 100 probably. That I'm going to be building on the channel. So these decks are aimed to be for newer players. They're straightforward. They're going to include cards that you can potentially add in later on to complicate, that are more potentially expensive, but are also more powerful. But I wanted the kind of base ones to be this straightforward, great beginner starter decks. These are going to be a mix between members only, people getting them, and then some are going to be public as well. If you become a member though, you're financially supporting the channel, you're supporting my dream of becoming a full-time Magic the Gathering content creator, and you get access to our kind of backlog of already, we've got a bunch of decks kind of built there, not relatively simple ones, so some of them, but there's a bunch of them there. Or you could just subscribe. If you just want to, support the channel by subscribing, that would be great too. Next, we've got the Desert Bloom, and this is my all-time favorite precon. I absolutely love it. So this one here is focused around playing lands and then either discarding, milling, and sacrificing your lands as well to get extra synergies. While that sounds like a whole bunch of things together, you're not doing them all at once, so it's kind of, pretty straightforward from there. It's a land-focused deck, and you're going to be getting a lot of extra lands out, whether they're coming from your graveyard, whether they're whatever. So you're going to have a bunch of mana here, which helps kind of bridge that gap between making choices or accidentally using your mana and making the wrong choice for it, because you have more mana to be able to make the choice that you potentially should have made earlier. You also use your graveyard here a little bit, so you're kind of leaning into that. But the graveyard's mostly for your lands, like, playing your lands from your graveyard, bringing them back from the graveyard, etc. So it's kind of not a big issue and not a lot to kind of keep in mind. This one here's going to teach you more about, like, utilizing your cards in different and more interesting ways. And, it's also you get to create plant tokens. You get this Mandalorian looking dude here as well. So Yuma, Proud Protector, is your commander that I would definitely suggest you use here. He costs 1 less for each land that is in your graveyard. Whenever you attack or whenever he enters the battlefield, you're going to sacrifice a land, which sounds like such a silly concept, right? Like getting rid of your lands that you've got here, which are your mana, it doesn't sound like a good idea, but in this deck it is. So it's kind of, teaching a little bit more out there stuff. And then you get to draw a card if you do that as well. And then also, if a land goes into your graveyard from anywhere, whether it's a battlefield, your deck, or from your hand, you're going to create a 4/2 green plant warrior creature token with reach. So you get to create this kind of plant warrior army as well. As for the additional synergies, as I said, this is, while it is like around sacrificing stuff in lands, it's also a landfall deck. So like any of these triggers here that are like, if a land enters the battlefield, they will say landfall on them. Ancient Green Warden works really well with this because he makes them trigger an additional time, but there's a bunch of really great ways to kind of make use of this and be able to create a whole bunch of tokens and be able to swing them at people. It's relatively simple, but also just a little bit of extra complexity in learning to use your cards in a different way. Next up, we got the Virtue and Valor one. So this is the one that I picked up from my 6, almost 7-year-old to kind of start learning magic. It is based around auras and buffing up your creatures with them. So auras are just enchantments that equip onto creatures. No, I say equip, but they're not equipment. They go onto creatures and they buff them up. So there's a lot of triggers in this one. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of different triggers in here, but most of these triggers are whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield or whenever you cast an enchantment. Therefore, they all will trigger at the same time, which makes it relatively simple and easy to learn. So this is going to be like our trigger learning deck, right? So there's a lot that you can use to improve it later on as well. There's auras and enchantments that have been around forever that are going to be good in here, but it's mostly just going to be learning about, how to kind of buff up your creatures and which creatures to buff up, and also kind of, just learning when I play this enchantment, what on my battlefield is going to do something here. And because, as I said, they all will do basically trigger off the same things, it's relatively simple for you to learn. So a couple different cards from here. We've got Alavira of the Wild Court, who's your kind of commander that you're going to most likely use. Whenever they enter the battlefield or attack, you're going to create this Virtuous Roll token. So this is an aura that is also a token, and then it's going to equip onto a creature, and that creature just gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. It's great. It's relatively simple. You're going to buff up your creatures. Boom. And then whenever an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you're going to draw a card. Again, that's a relatively simple thing for you to learn, a relatively simple trigger to kind of just keep in the back of your mind as you're going. We've got Ejani's Chosen as another choice card within here, and that's one that I was talking about, when an enchantment enters the battlefield, do something. So this one here creates a cat. It's easy. And then our final one here is the Family Matters Precon. So this one here is based around basically just playing creatures with great ETB or enter the battlefield effects. They're going to be enter the battlefield, do something. Simple. And it has it written on your card as to what it does when it comes in, so you can kind of, choose which one's going to be best to play at the time. Then you've got your commander here, who essentially allows you to double them by paying 2 more generic mana extra, because you're going to create it, and then you're going to create this extra 1/1 token copy of that creature just by paying 2 mana. It's simple. You've got some synergies across your creatures, but relatively kind of straightforward. This one's just going to teach you about kind of learning to play which creature when, and kind of just figuring that kind of thing out, as well as when's the right time for you to pay this 2 extra. There's a lot of ways to look at upgrading it down the line, but overall just plays nice out of the box. Just add in, there's enter the battlefield effects dating back to the start of the game that you can add in. So our commander here is Zinnia Valley's Voice. So they have flying, and when they attack, not when they attack, all the time, they get +X+0. So additional power, essentially, for each of your creatures that have base power 1. So if you've got 3 creatures out there that have base power 1, it does say other creatures, so he doesn't count himself. 3 creatures out there that have base power 1, he's going to get +3/+0. He also gives all of your creature cards the additional ability, essentially, to have Offspring 2. So that means that when you play a creature, you can pay 2 extra to offspring it, creating an additional 1/1 token copy of that. So say, for example, if you did it with this Agate Instigator here, who has it built into him, when you cast this, if you pay 1 and a red for his normal cost, and then 2 extra here, you're going to have a Agate Instigator, and then you're going to have a 1/1, so just a 1 toughness, 1 power, copy of it. And it does the exact same thing. It has the exact same abilities and everything, which is great, because when, you've got the Agate Instigator in here as the additional kind of, card that you're going to find within this one here is whenever another creature you control enters. So whenever, you play a new creature and it comes onto the battlefield, or, you cheat out a creature somehow, it's going to deal 1 damage to each opponent. So you can see how that can get out of control when you get, 2 creatures entering, 2 damage to each opponent. Or say, for example, you've got, 2 of these Agate Instigators, now 2 creatures enter, you're going to deal 2 2 creatures, you're going to deal 4 damage to each person. Well, my brain just fried then. So yeah, you get that kind of synergy there for creatures just entering the battlefield. So these decks are all built around, like, you know, learning something new. If I wanted to kind of dumb them down, or not dumb them down, it's not the right word, simplify them in regards to which one you should get. Temur Roar, get that one if you love dragons and you want to kind of, you know, just play big dragons and attack people with big dragons and stuff. The Eternal Might one, this one's zombie, and if you want to learn about, you know, triggering and playing with your graveyard and stuff, this is a great one there, mostly around playing with your graveyard, because that's kind of the big thing with this one, is playing with your graveyard. The bonus decks, we're going to have a huge variety of those, so this is irrelevant. The Desert Bloom one, to learn how to utilize your cards in different ways, and also kind of building a big board with landfall stuff as well. And then our Virtue and Valor, learning your auras and your triggers from your auras entering and stuff. And finally, the Family Matters one, just learning about ETBs, when to play extra characters, extra creatures, and also when to utilize that kind of offspring mechanic as well. But that's it for today. I hope you guys had a wonderful day, and goodbye.